And joining me now is Jayanth Gumaraju, CEO of Banyan Security. Jayanth, thank you for joining us today on the Dark Reading News Desk.
Thanks for having me.
Zero trust, of course, is a buzzword that is on everybody's lips, especially public relations people, and frankly, reporters and editors as well, so guilty as charged. Let's start with why the world needs zero trust in this day and age. Can we start there?
Sure, yeah. I want to address basically the buzzword issue of zero trust first, and it's like, I think you're totally right. Like, you just walk in the corridor right now in the expo floor, you'll see a lot of zero trust words thrown about.
Sure.
It's one of those things where, if you actually, the computer science equivalent name for that is least privilege access, and that is like something that everybody understands. But as you know, it's taken to the extreme right now with every company out there talking about zero trust in their own way.
Zero trust sounds a little hostile, a little like, I'm not sure if I trust you.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not going to have any trust on this, right?
Okay.
Exactly. It's like, yeah, it's actually basically least privilege access, and how do you provide it? And kind of like what you said, right? Like, there are different flavors for it. And when you talk about least privilege access, is it about, two applications talking to each other that needs to have least privilege access, or is it about IoT devices having to have least privilege access? But what we do at Banyan is all about providing secure remote access for users, like employees, third parties, and so on, to access their internal and SaaS applications,
Sure.
basically.
I think part of the problem is also that zero trust is kind of positioned as a catch-all. It's going to help
That's exactly
everything
right.
and solve all your problems, which in fact may be true. But if we look at the major threats that most organizations are up against, I'm thinking like ransomware, social engineering threats, this kind of thing, like the one that just hit Twilio, for example.
Yeah.
Is zero trust helpful here?
Yeah, I think, the foundation of a lot of these attacks are around not having, least privilege access. By that I mean, specific users that are entitled to access certain applications or devices, are entitled to access very specific resources for a very specific duration of time. So when this is not met, all kinds of hell breaks loose. And you mentioned ransomware and you mentioned social engineering attacks. If you take each of them, they have their own aspect to it, right? Like, if you think about ransomware, you get a phishing email, you click on it, and even before you know, your device is compromised, and then all that is bad, but then it gets really worse when it starts spreading around, right? Like, you have that, you log into your network, and then some other device gets it, and then that spreads around, and then that gives them the ability to also kind of see, where else you have stored your backup data, so that I can go and stop, encrypt it in that, and
Sure.
so that you have a really hard time getting back your data. So all of that comes back to about, how do you prevent lateral movement, right? That becomes the foundation of it. And again, zero trust with remote access kind of thing we talked about is a big deal about it. It's if you think about VPNs, that's what people used for the longest time for remote access. It kind of drops you into the network, and you have unfettered access now to all kinds of segments in the network segments inside the company. And so with something like zero trust or least privilege remote access, you are ensuring that users are accessing very specific applications for only the time and place that they're needed in. Beyond that, they won't get access to it.
So thanks for mentioning, thanks for mentioning VPNs. I don't think they're necessarily obsolete security, but I'm wondering if we're starting to look at VPNs the way like we look at like fax machines or pagers. like it's had its day and now we've moved on. Is that accurate, or do you think there's still a place for VPN?
Right. It's like, obviously, there is a future world where it'll probably be, redundant to have something like that. But if you look now, there are a lot of people still using it, and it's like, it's going to be a slow process to kind of wean off of it.
Sure.
And that's where, it's one of those very important things where, how do you build a product which takes into account that it's, for some companies, it's going to be like, hey, I'm going to rip and replace my VPN with something new, and that could be a ZTNA or Zero Trust Network Access solution like ours. It's great. The other aspect is also about how do you, coexist with VPNs and slowly wean it out, because there are cases where people are so used to it for the very long time. So how do you make that happen?
It's entrenched. So knowing that zero trust is the right approach, to pursue for this sort of level of protection, and learning from the existing solutions like VPNs, like Bastion hosts. What has Banyan built?
Yeah, so Banyan, overall, we've kind of like thought about this entire entire product. It was all built like pre-COVID and everything else, so it's not like a COVID company.
Sure.
So we were back in my day, I was at VMware, and we were doing a lot of fun stuff around it. But the main thing that came out of a lot of this, the initial thinking about the market was people are getting much more remote. There are a lot more devices that are spread all over the world. And then there are applications, again, going to hybrid, multi-cloud, and all that stuff, right? And so with this highly distributed set of people and applications, how do you connect the two? That was the high-level question we started to solve. And so we built the whole platform from the ground up, with taking the identity of the users, of the devices into account when they try to access. And it's like, and no more, like trusted networks as being the cornerstone, which has been the cornerstone for VPNs and other network-related solutions. And right now you see a lot of the word zero trust pasted on them, and all over the place based on that as well. So that's where I think there is a problem here, wherein we built the solution from the ground up for this new world, explicitly handling the right way to do remote access, and that's what we do.
What differentiates the Banyan approach to zero trust?
Yeah, so I think I would probably put it into like 2 or 3 different categories. First one I would say is like we have a really flexible architecture that enables flexible and easy to use architecture. Like you can deploy it in like 15 minutes, and depending on whatever you already have as investments inside your company, we would kind of like incorporate them as part of the overall zero trust effort. So this is actually, it's a huge advantage when it comes to different types of companies with regulatory requirements or not and stuff like that, right? So that's one piece of the puzzle. The other piece of the puzzle is we actually provide some amazing visibility into what's going on. Many times people are like blind to what's going on behind the scenes. So like which users are using what devices to access what applications at what point in time. Like, you get like really granular on it, and that makes it really critical for coming up with the right policies to be put in the company, for example. And finally, I would say that we are really good at, kind of like meeting you where you are and taking you much further in the zero trust or the security realm. Like we give you like really fine-grained access right to the API level if needed, about what can and cannot be accessed by specific people based on the device trust and user trust. So these dimensions usually make it really appealing for companies to kind of like, start using us in a very small way to begin with in some of these cases, and then expand very quickly to the whole company.
You indicated this is relatively easy to implement. What about the management, the ongoing just care and feeding?
Yeah.
You talked about policy management and even just establishing policies. How much more work is this than, say, something like a VPN?
It's amazing, like when you talk to customers, they say, if you can give me better security and easy to manage and easy to use, it'll be the best solution possible. And somehow or the other, we've landed up on zero trust product, which kind of seems to satisfy those. Because if you think about the way people defined policies before, it was all about, like the VPN policies about these IP address ranges have access to things. What are IP addresses? They're like, 4-tuple numbers, and it's
right.
You actually want to say these people belonging to these kinds of groups in the company can access these things or these applications, provided they have like high level of trust. That is what you want to indicate, and that's how you can write policies in this new way we built it. And so it kind of opens up the doors to make it really simple to manage.
Sure. Jayanth, what advice do you have for customers or prospective customers who are exploring this? What are some good first steps they might take?
Yeah, I would say start small. That is like the best advice I can give. Like you can start with just one application and try to see what benefits you get based on this kind of an approach. And then you will be convinced yourself that this is something that's so much better than what you have. And then within no time, you'll start putting more and more applications and resources behind this kind of a technology while continuing to use your VPN until you're happy to kind of wean it out. And that's something that I would recommend a lot of companies to do, because that is like a, otherwise you'll feel that it's a huge project, you need to boil the ocean, I have so many things, how did it come together? This becomes the cornerstone. It's not easy. And we have a free product actually that we give out for up to 50 users now for them to just try for free and see for themselves what benefit this can give for them. And I think that's a great starting point for a lot of people.
Well, great stuff, Jayanth. You've got me thinking very differently about VPNs and zero trust, or I prefer your acronym, I think, least privilege access. So Thanks for joining us today on News Desk. Really,
Thank you so much. Yeah, thanks for having me. I really appreciate your time on
Pleasure.
this.
We've been talking with Jayanth Kumaraju, CEO of Banyan Security.